Hello everybody and thank you for joining me. This is Sierra from Sierra T Designs and today I have this really pretty alcohol ink card to share with you. So let's jump right in. So I did trim down a piece of Yupo paper here and I have it to about A2 sized. We're going to trim it down again after we create the background just so I can mat it on some silver cardstock, but I had to start with a smaller piece because I usually start with the 5x7 and then I'm sad because I have to cut it down. So if I start cutting it down, then I'm better off. So I have that piece of Yupo and then I have two colors here. I have purple Twilight and cloudy blue alcohol inks. Now, my thought was kind of that I was going to get them to kind of do an ombre in the center. I'm not sure I quite achieved what I was after, but I do think that it turned out really pretty. So regardless, I think that it worked. But I just have the two colors and I'm going to work them back and forth in the center there to kind of try to create a kind of ombre effect. And as usual, I like to work from one corner to the other. That's just a design I like. And I have the air blower and I did put down a fair amount of blending solution to start with just to get the colors to move because I wanted a kind of more wispy look, if that makes sense, like a more, I don't know the right word for that, airy look, I don't know the right word for it other than wispy, but I really wanted an organic look to it. So I put down a fair amount of blending solutions to get a fair amount of movement in my colors. So it did take quite a while to dry, but that gave me a lot of time to kind of move the colors and play with them until I was kind of happy with what I got. And of course, the purple is very vibrant. I maybe should have picked a slightly more vibrant blue to kind of meld with it, but I love how it turned out, so I'm okay with it. And then I am going to cut down a piece of glitter cardstock. This is Simon Says Stamp Silver glitter cardstock, and I'm just trimming it down to be about 1/8 of an inch smaller than my A2 base. And then I'm going to bring my alcohol ink, my Yupo paper in, and I'm going to trim off just a small amount to give it another 1/8 of an inch less than my mat. So it'd be 1/4 of an inch less than my base, if that makes sense. Because again, I really like to mat things. I love the frame, first of all, because I think that it really does well with really colorful pieces. And I love that extra sparkle. Like I don't want a ton of sparkle necessarily. Well, I do because I end up doing my sentiment, but I kind of like bringing in different aspects to the project. And I think a mat makes it really easy to do that. So I brought in my Magic Mat here and I'm going to put this through my Gemini. I do use a Gemini Jr plate because I find it way easier. And then I did also bring in some Velum just to go behind my sentiment to give it a little more weight so that it would stand against the background a little bit better. But I mean, you could layer it up. That would also help. I just chose to add Velum and I used Velum so that you could still see all the beautiful color through it without kind of hindering that stunning alcohol ink background. But it still gives you that like separation from the background to the sentiment. So I am going to bring my pokey tool, my craft pick here, and just gently poke out the extra bits that are in the letters. You do want to be a little bit careful. This sentiment is quite delicate, and because it's not a thick cardstock, it's really easy to bend or to kind of distort the word. So you kind of want to be a bit careful. You saw there, I almost ripped the like B off of the rest of the word. So you do have to be a bit careful with it, but I think that it's just a stunning die. So it works really well. And you saw that I cut it out of the center of the mat. Now, of course, you could cut other things out of the center just so that you could not waste any of the glitter cardstock, but I didn't have anything else to cut at the moment. So I just cut the word out that I needed to cut. And then I'm going to adhere my my alcohol ink piece on top of my glitter cardstock. And I'm going to put my Misti on top of it just to weigh it down. I find glitter cardstock can be difficult to get glue to adhere to. But I like to use liquid glue because I need the little bit of wiggle time to kind of get it centered to my eye. And I find that if I use like score tape or foam tape or anything like that, I have a harder time centering anything. Now you can do foam tape and then cover it in liquid glue, but you still get that wiggle room, right? But But that's, I mean, you're still using liquid glue. So it's one of those things where it still might not adhere as nicely as I'd hope. And then I put some liquid glue on the back of my Word Beautiful. And then I did pounce it on my glass mat just to take off any excess glue. This is just to stop it from oozing out all over my vellum. The vellum will show the glue if you have too much. So I did kind of pounce some off, and then I just use it like a baby wipe and wipe it off. The glue is really easy to get off the glass mat. And then I do need to put the tittle on the eye. So I did just put a little drop of glue, and then I just picked it up with my embellishment wand there from Studio Katia. And then that's my sentiment. So now I'm going to kind of play with the layout a little bit. So you're going to see here in a second, well, I'm going to adhere this down to the base first because I am again concerned about the letters in the center trying to bow. The letters in the center are trying to bow out the cardstock a little bit. So I'm going to weigh that down as well with my Misti again. My Misti sits on my desk, so it's just such an easy weight to bring in to like weigh stuff down. But I do wiggle this into where I want it so that I have that little bit of a white border around it, and then I put my Misti on top. So you see there that I've already brought in my crystals. They're not actually adhered down at this point. This was just for placement purposes because I wasn't totally sure where I wanted my sentiment. So I kind of played with my layout back and forth a little bit until I was really happy with it. So they're like silver sparkle crystals by Studio Katia. They're just kind of sitting there to kind of give me an idea of where I want my sentiment to go. And then I once again, of course, pounced down my sentiment so that the glue would not be seeping out from behind the letters. And then I'm going to bring in an acrylic block for this. I used an acrylic block for this part instead of the Misti because those crystals would hold the Misti up and it wouldn't sit on the sentiment, so it wouldn't actually weigh it down, so it wouldn't actually help you at all. Otherwise, you could absolutely, like if the crystals weren't there, you could absolutely use the Misti to weigh down the sentiment, but because I have the crystals sitting there, they sit higher than the sentiment, so I did have to bring in a block just to hold it down. And it does try to lift a little bit like on the loops. And I just stuck a little bit underneath. I lifted it up a little bit and then stuck a little bit more glue underneath and then weighed it down. And then I decided that I really wanted to bring in UR. Now I couldn't find at this point, I couldn't find a stamp set in my my stash that just said UR. Without, trimming a stamp apart and whatnot, and I didn't want to do any of that. So I brought a sentiment strip out from one of Simon's sentiment strips, and I cut off the "you are." I think there's two sentiments here. It's like "you are my reason for," or "you are the reason to celebrate," and the other one's like "you are inspirational" or something like that. And I just want the "you are," of course, because I want "you are beautiful." So I brought out my trimmer so that it would be straight, and then I do have to eyeball it because, of course, this is tiny, but I find I'm going to get a way better, guys, words are hard today, apparently. I get a way better cut if I use my trimmer as opposed to my scissors. As a general rule, I don't cut straight for some reason, so. And I am going to kind of play with the placement. I wasn't totally sure where I wanted it, but then I put some 3D foam squares on the back, and then I just adhere it down kind of centered in that space between the T and the B at the top there. So, I mean, this just kind of breaks it up a little bit. It's not really meant to pull the focus at all. It's just really kind of to break up where your eye is trying to look, just because everything's a bit light. So that is the card I have for you guys. I would love to know what you think about this card. Do you like playing with alcohol inks? Is that something that you enjoy, or do you find them intimidating? I'd love to know. I'd love if you'd leave me a like, leave me a comment, and consider subscribing if you haven't already. I do new videos every Monday and Thursday, and sometimes in between. Thank you so much, guys, and I will see you again very soon. Bye-bye for now.